In 2024, NASA needed to send astronauts to the International Space Station. It had no rocket of its own that could do it. The agency that put a man on the moon, the agency with a 60-year head start, the agency with a $25 billion annual budget, had to buy a seat from a company that didn't exist 20 years ago. This isn't a story about NASA failing. It's a story about something stranger. A government that built the entire modern space age and then quietly admitted it could no longer afford to run it. So here's the real question. If NASA has more money, more history, and more engineers than SpaceX will ever have, why can't it just take its own rockets back? Let's break down what actually happened. For most of its history, NASA didn't build rockets the way you'd think. It designed them, then handed the blueprints to contractors, Boeing, Lockheed, later their joint venture, United Launch Alliance. Those contractors got paid whether the rocket flew on time or not. This is called cost-plus contracting. The contractor's costs go up, the profit goes up with it. There is no financial penalty for being slow. A space shuttle launch under this system cost NASA roughly $1.5 billion per flight, and the shuttle flew the same design for 30 years. Barely changing, because nobody in the chain was rewarded for innovation. They were rewarded for showing up. Then in 2008, NASA tried something almost embarrassing for an agency its size. It asked a small, unproven rocket company to bid on cargo resupply missions, not because it believed in them, but because it was desperate for a cheaper option. That company was SpaceX. SpaceX didn't get paid for effort. It got paid for results. A fixed price per launch, take it or leave it. If the rocket blew up, that cost came out of SpaceX's pocket, not the taxpayers. That single contract structure changed everything downstream. Here's the uncomfortable math NASA doesn't advertise. A Falcon 9 launch costs around $67 million. NASA's own in-house heavy rocket, the SLS, built using the old contractor system, costs over $2 billion per launch. That's not a 10% difference. That's a rocket nearly 30 times more expensive for similar payload class missions. Why? Because SpaceX reuses its boosters. The same Falcon 9 first stage has flown more than 20 times. NASA's SLS throws away its core stage and engines after every single launch. Engines that originally cost over $100 million each dropped into the ocean. NASA knows this. Engineers inside the agency have known this for over a decade. But NASA isn't just a space agency. It's a federal jobs program spread across dozens of congressional districts. The SLS program supports thousands of jobs in Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, Florida, states whose senators sit on the committees that approve NASA's budget. Cancel the expensive rocket, and you cancel jobs in someone's home state. Nobody in Congress wants to be that senator. So the inefficiency isn't a mistake. It's a feature of how the funding survives. This is the part people miss. SpaceX isn't winning because it's smarter than NASA's engineers. NASA has some of the best aerospace engineers on the planet. SpaceX is winning because it's structured like a company that goes bankrupt if it fails, while NASA is structured like an institution that keeps getting funded, whether it succeeds or not. And once you see that, the bigger picture gets uncomfortable. The United States government has effectively outsourced its access to space for astronauts, for cargo, increasingly for national security payloads, to a private company controlled by one person. Not a board, not a public shareholder vote. One man's company is now the backbone of America's ability to reach orbit. If SpaceX raises its prices, if SpaceX deprioritizes NASA missions in favor of Starlink or commercial customers, if the relationship between that one person and the federal government sours, NASA has no real backup. The agency that once symbolized independent national capability is now a customer, standing in line, hoping its order gets filled. NASA didn't lose to SpaceX. NASA built the conditions that made replacing itself the only rational outcome, and it still hasn't decided whether to fix that or just live with it. So the question worth sitting with isn't whether SpaceX is good for space exploration. It's this: when a government becomes dependent on a single private company for something as critical as access to space, who actually has the power? The agency that gives the orders, or the company that owns the only